Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Dungeons & Dragons 4E creation video. Last video was posted a while back, and I just really haven't had the time or the willpower to do another one, because these take a lot of work. But now I do. So today, we are going to start with the Warlord, since last time we left off with the Warlock. On your screen, you can see the character sheet and handbook number 1 for 4th edition. So, Warlord is page 143. I'm pretty sure these pages are a little bit out of sync. Yeah, only by a little bit though. So, all the character fields, name, gender, etc., 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 we leave those up to you, because that's your character. The parts we do fill in, though, are of course the stats and the features. Race is totally up to you also. However, we will pick a race just for the fact of building it. Now, really, what I tend to do is I tend to pick the class and then the race. If you want to pick the race and the class, that's perfectly fine. I find it's easier to determine what race you want to be after you've researched your class. So let's start. Onward to victory. They cannot stand before us. The Warlord, their role is a leader. You are an inspiring commander and a master of battle tactics. Your job is to tank and even heal. You can be this very charismatic leader or this intimidating warlord. It's up to you. You can build him any way possible. When I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, my one of my good friends played a warlord, and he went for the more diplomatic approach and a more healing approach. It got to the point where if we were taking damage, we would just look at him and he would monologue to us while snapping his fingers in an A tone. And not only did we get healed, but we got buffed, and it was awesome. We got into a tight predicament, and he went up right to a leader and would talk us out of the danger. Warlords are a very awesome class, and I like them a lot. Their power source is a martial power. You have become an expert in tactics through endless hours of training and practice, personal determination, and your own sheer physical toughness. Your key abilities are going to be strength, intellect, and charisma. So you're going to want to focus your ability scores there. I forgot where my dice were put, and we're going to need those. Your armor proficiencies are cloth, leather, hide, and chainmail. I would strongly recommend that you stick with the and light shields, but stick with the chainmail, because you are going to be tanking, and since you're going to be tanking, you're going to want a very heavy AC. However, if you're not going for a tanking build, let's say you just want to be a leader, but you want to kind of be more of a striker, then going for the hide or leather armor is also good. Cloth would be merely for a more of a role-playing feel. Maybe you wanted to start off level 1 in cloth robes. Perhaps you were ambushed by a bunch of raiders and they took your armor and left you with rags, something like that. So many possibilities of what you can do. I tend to just start with chainmail, so that way I have that good starting AC. Weapon proficiencies. You're good with simple melee weapons and military melee weapons, along with simple ranged weapons. So you will have your short bow, short crossbow, something like that, to pick away at far, but then you'll have your mighty long sword or mace along with a shield, something like that to go with it. Bonuses to defense, you got +1 fortitude and +1 will. This is to make you healthier, stronger, and more confident, I guess you could say. So we're going to start getting the character build now that we've covered off the general basis. The first thing that I think is the most important part is at the beginning of every single build, you want to get your ability scores first. So There's tons of different ways to do that, and I will show you right here. Let's head over to the player's handbook, and if we go to ability scores on page 16, which for me is a little bit here, it'll tell us different methods to generating ability scores. Method 1 is a standard array where you have 16, 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10 put into your stats. The method number 2 is customization score, where basically you start with 8, 10, 10, 10, 10, and you have 22 points to spend on improving them, and the cost of raising a score from one number to a higher number is shown on the table. This one's a little bit more complex method, but can work out very well. I personally don't like doing it because I find that the standard array and method 3 are a little bit more accurate for me. If you want to see an in-depth guide on how to use this customizing score, let me know and I'll make a video on it. Method number 3 is usually the method I go with, and that's rolling scores, where you take 4d6s and you roll them. You take the 3 highest dice and you add them together, and that is one of your 3 scores. For the sakes of time, we are going to be putting the standard array. So let's start here. So we know if we go back to our Warlord, 143, so it's 144 for me, that strength, intellect, and charisma are our starting ones. So we have a 16. We want to put this in the one we're going to be using a lot. So I would recommend that, well, we're going to go for a tank build here. A good thing about being a tank is a feature that you can get is the ability to wear plate armor, and plate armor is better than chainmail. So if you're going for a tank like we are, that might be something you might want to invest into. For this case, we're going to be this heavy hitting tank. So we're going to be putting that 16 into strength. Next, we have a 14, and we still need intellect and charisma. We're going to be putting this 14 into charisma because I want this guy to be able to talk. I want this guy to have a general idea of how to deal with people. Maybe he is going to be a little bit more diplomatic, or maybe he's going to use his charisma to intimidate people. My thing crashed a little bit. And we're going to put the 13 into intellect. This will help bolster his score, his spells a little bit. It's not majorly important with how we're building this Warlord, but it does help a lot. We don't need dexterity as much because we're not going to be running around. We're not going to be stealthing. We are going to be, hey enemy, you are fighting me. So we'll put the 10 into dexterity. We have a 12 and 11 now. Constitution will affect our hit points, and hit points are very important. So we'll put the 12 in there, and we'll put the 11 in wisdom. Maybe we're not the most wise, but we are smart. Now we have our ability scores. We have to next do our ability modifiers. These will be in a bonus to different spells, moves, checks, and rolls we make. So we base by the chart that you see right here, we can determine what ability score we get. So strength. I have a strength score of 16, so I'm going to get a +3 to my my strength. So in ability score, we put +3, or just 3 is fine. Constitution is 12, where we get a +1. 10, we don't get an ability score. That's the neutral zone. With a 13, we also get +1. With an 11, we don't get an ability modifier. And with a 14, we get 2. Now, once you start leveling up, you'll also be able to add half of your level here. Whereas we're level 1 right now, we can't do that. So your mod plus half level is going to be the exact same thing as your generic mod. But for instance, when you hit level 2, you're going to add +1 to that. It'll be mod +1 because half of level 2 is 1. And that will also be used with your checks and whatnot as you grow in level. All right, now that we got that, we can head back over to our Warlord, 143, 144. And now we got that. Next, we can start focusing on our other defenses. So since we're level 1, we know our default AC is going to be 10. All the defaults are 10. But our Fortitude, Reflex, and Will get a boost. And now, this isn't our final boost yet, because we haven't picked our race yet. We're getting the general outlines of, of the class down, and then we'll go to the race and edit what we can. So, a +1 to Fortitude and Will. Right here under classes, where in Fortitude and Will, as you see here, we put that +1. That raises both of their scores to 11. Now, we're going to determine hit points, which goes right here. I'm also going to pull up my calculator because we'll need that. Hit points are determined by 12 plus your Constitution score. Where my Constitution score is 12, I'm going to have a total of 24 hit points. Each level, I'll be gaining 5 hit points as well. Healing surges are used to heal yourself while you're on a short rest. Because when you're on a long rest, you fully regain everything. But during a short rest, depending on your DM, you spend healing surges to heal yourself up. Maybe after an encounter, you're only allowed a short rest. You use this to heal yourself up before the next encounter. And the number that you get per day is 7 plus your Constitution modifier, which is 1. So I'm going to get 8 healing surges a day. Now the value of the healing surge is 1/4 of your HP. And also your bloodied is 1/2 of your HP, which is usually why you'll spend your healing surges. You'll be bloodied, you'll be near death, you'll want to heal up. So bloodied is, like I said, half of your HP. So our bloodied is going to be 12, making our surge value 6. Make sure I did my math right there. Yes. So each day we can use 6 surges for a value of 8. So we can heal ourselves 6 times. And our bloodied value being 12. Next is our trained skills. This helps really define who your character is. So if you're trained with it, you get a +5 to it. And this will be to your different checks. So let's say you're trying to intimidate a gnome into giving you his lunch money. That would require an intimidation check, which is a charisma check. If you're trained in it, that's an immediate 5 with your charisma bonus, which ours is 2. So that would give us a +7 to any intimidation checks we do. So throughout these trained skills lists, we can choose 4 trained skills at first level from the list here in the player book that describes. We can pick from athletics, diplomacy, endurance, heal, history, or intimidate. 6 options, and we can pick 4 of them, meaning 2 get left out. With the type of build I'm not picking heal or endurance because we're not going to be running around a lot. We're going to be very tanky, strong, and sturdy. We want to intimidate foes or talk ourselves out of danger when it's too much for us to handle, or cower guys in a way that isn't intimidating, trick him into doing something they don't want to do. So we're going to get trained in, where is it? Athletics, which is +5. Diplomacy, +5. Intimidation, +5. And history, +5. Everything else will be 0. Next, we add in our ability modifiers, which also include the half level. So you gotta constantly be updating these. So our dexterity is 0. So anything with dexterity in it, we can go ahead and change to 0 here. All right. Our wisdom's also 0, so let's get wisdom out of the way. Wisdom. Our charisma is 2. Charisma. Our intellect is 1. Intellect. And our constitution is 1. Where'd the constitution go? Constitution. Oh, I missed. Nope. Wrong box. And our strength is 3. So this is what it'll look like. Now you add your scores together, and that is your bonus. So we got 0, 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 5, 6, 7, 0, 1, 0, 6, 0, 5, 6, 7, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0. Next is the last little part where we are told what our features are. We don't want to get into this too much right now because that's when we actually go in depth to our character. So right now we have generally molded what our character is going to look like stats wise. Now we can determine what race we want to do. Now there is a variety of races in the 3 handbooks. However, for the simple stakes of sticking to each handbook, we're only going to be using races provided in the handbook with the class. So since Warlords is in Player's Handbook number 1, we're going to use a race from Player's Handbook number 1, just so we're not flipping between PDFs and whatnot online. Now, is this the way that it has to be done? By no means. One of the races you can be in 4E is Minotaur. If you want to be a Warlord Minotaur, that's awesome. In fact, that sounds terrifying. It's just for simplicity stakes of not needing to keep flipping between books here. We're going to stick to the first one. So, the races in this book, we have Dragonborn, Dwarf, Eladrin, Elf, Half-Elf, Halfling, Humans, and Tieflings. Humans are the most common, and what's great about humans is they allow you to get an extra at-will power as long as an extra feature and a +2 to an ability score. I generally go human just for that sakes. However, I also love Dragonborns. Dragonborns is one of my favorite races also, just because they get a really cool dragon breath weapon and some pretty good stat boosts too, and they're generally better for the tankier characters along with the dwarfs. Now a dwarf war leader sounds amazing, so for this video we're going to go with the dwarf. Masters of stone and iron, dauntless and unyielding in the face of adversity. Dwarfs are generally small. They get +2 to their constitution and wisdom, which means our health also goes up a bit. So let's start with that. Our race is going to be the dwarf, and our class, the warlord. So +2 to our constitution. This raises it to 14, giving us a 2 ability modifier. This also turns our hit points to 26, which turns, what's half of 26? 26. Why am I even asking that? I know what half of 26 is. 13. Why did I put 14? I'm bad at math, excuse me. Times 2 divided by 4. 6 is still, because you always round down if you have a decimal. So our surge value is still 6, and our surges per day is 7, 8, 9. Next, we get +2 to our wisdom, bringing it to 13, which gives us a +2 modifier. Now what this does is also anything with Constitution and Wisdom becomes a 2. So like this becomes a 2. Constitution, this becomes a 2. Wisdom right here becomes a 2. Now once again, this is the most effective way I find doing a character. Is if you have a better method, that's all to you. By no means is this the proper way to build a character. There's so many different ways to build a character. This is what I find the most comfortable. Oh, what happened there? That was weird. Alright, sweet. Next, we have a medium size where we now know we have a speed of base 5 squares and can see in low light. Languages we know are Common and Dwarven. Common and Dwarven. Skill bonuses. We get a +2 to Dungeoneering and Endurance. So in Misc, we'll put this bonus. So in Dungeoneering, we get a +2, turning it to a 4. And in Endurance, we get a +2, turning it to 4. So even though we didn't pick Endurance as a trained skill, it's still a pretty high roll that we get a bonus for. Next is race features. Now, the character sheet doesn't give you a lot of room to fully explain what a move does. Generally, you would have the handbook right beside you. If your DM wanted to know what your race did, you just flipped it over and read it to him. So that's what I do here. I've tried fitting them in a lot of time with abbreviations and everything, and I always just end up confusing myself. So this is how I do it again, but once again, whatever way is most comfortable with you, do it. Because that's what's important here. It's how you find it the most easiest to remember. So our first class feature is Cast Iron Stomach. Right, that here, Stomach, which gives you a +5 racial bonus to saving throws against poison, which is pretty good. So basically, if you are about to be poisoned, you would make a saving throw, and this would give you a +5 against it. Dwarven Resilience. This is a pretty nice one. Dwarven Resilience. You can use your second wind as a minor action instead of a standard action. Second wind is allowed as a way for you to spend a healing surge while in combat. Basically, you have 1 second wind and an encounter. DM discretion, it varies, but generally you would have 1. And let's say you're like 2 hit points. You would use a second wind as a, standard action. So instead of attacking, you would heal. But now you can use it as a minor action, so you'd be able to attack and heal. Keep in mind, you wouldn't be able to do something like move, though, because that's also a minor action. Dwarven Weapon Proficiency. Let's write that down here. Dwarven Weapon Proficiency, prof for short. And what this does is you gain proficiency with throwing hammers and war hammers. So that's good to know. While you're making your warlord and selecting your weapons, we're going to want to remember that a warhammer is a potential weapon we want to use because we're proficient with it. We're not forced to use it, but it is something that we should consider using. Encumbered Speed is our neck. I totally butchered that. Let me try. Encumbered, that sounds right, speed. You can move at your normal speed even when it would normally be reduced by armor or a heavy load. Other effects that limit speed, such as difficult terrain, don't affect you. So what that means is with heavier armor, you get side effects such as reduced speed. With a dwarf, let's say you're wearing plate mail, which is I think -1 or -2 to speed. Your movement would become 4. However, with this, your movement is still 5. And the last feature is stand your ground, which states when an effect forces you to move through a pull, push, or slide, you can move one square less than the effect specifies. This means an effect that normally pulls, pushes, or slides a target one square does not force you to move unless you want to. In addition, when an attack would knock you prone, you can immediately make a saving throw to avoid falling prone. So, few examples of this. You're grappled hooked by an enemy, he pulls you 3 squares towards him. Instead of 3, it's 2. An enemy sweeps a mace underneath your ankles and knocks you on the ground. You roll a check and you succeed. You jump over the mace and take minor damage from the wind rushing in your eyes. Something like that. This allows you to be more sturdy, more tanky than normal. That's all there is that you get as a dwarf. Everything else here tells you how you would play a dwarf, role playing why, physical qualities, and other things to build your character in general. So now that we have all this, we can go back to our warlord right here and start the class features, which is combat leader, commanding presence, and inspiring word. Now, what are those? Well, if we go right down here, it'll tell us. So, all warlords have these features, and we'll get to the inspiring warlord and tactical warlord in a second here. So, you have combat leader, where you and each ally within 10 squares who can see you and hear you gain a +2 power bonus to initiative. This is great, especially for someone like me who rolls very low initiative all the time. It can help give them the opportunity to go before an enemy would in an encounter. Commanding presence has 2 things depending on which type of warlord you want to be. If you choose to be an inspiring presence, so more of an inspiring warlord, when an ally who can see you spends an action point to take an extra action, you also regain lost hit points equal to 1/2 your level plus your charisma modifier. So for us, we would gain 2 health when an ally spends an action point at level 1. Tactical presence is the other option you can take, where an ally you can see spends an action point to make an extra attack. The ally gains a bonus to the attack roll equal to 1/2 your intelligence modifier, which for us isn't very high. So they would gain 1. Because I'm pretty sure 1/2. No, I guess it'd be 0. DM's discretion there. If I was the case, I would say 1. But from the way we built it, it looks like we're going to be an inspiring warlord because we didn't focus in intellect. We went more charisma and strength. The choice you make also provides bonuses to certain warlord powers. Individual powers detail the effects, if any, your commanding presence selection has on them. So your future powers that we're going to be looking into in a minute will have differences depending on which one of these presences you take. We are indeed going to be going for the inspiring. So inspiring. Our last feature is inspiring word, which lets us use the inspiring word power. Warlords can grant their comrades additional resiliences with nothing more than a shout of encouragement. So now, we've determined that we're going to be an inspiring warlord. What is an inspiring warlord? You lead by exhorting encouragement and inspiration. Your powers help your allies find new surges of courage and endurance within themselves, helping them heal, shrug off conditions, and defend themselves from attacks. Your attacks rely on strength, so that should be your best ability score, which it is. The benefits you give your allies through depend almost entirely on charisma, so make that your second. Intelligence is your best third choice, so you can be can dabble in other Warlord powers and help your reflex defense. Select powers to make the best use of your high charisma score. Ours is only 2, but with due time it will be higher. And then it suggests feats, skills, and whatnot that you can use. Now, generally I go with this just because it's a lot faster and easier, and this will probably be what we'll go with, at least with the feats, because we'll look into them, but feats are very detailed and take a long time, and I honestly find I don't use a lot of the feat features because I just don't really need them half the time, but the times I do, they help a lot. So now we are going over to Warlord powers, where we are going to look into our at-wills, encounters, dailies, etc. At level 1, you get 2 at-will powers, 1 encounter power, and 1 daily power. Daily powers sound like a level 3 thing, though. It's been a while since I did this. No, you do get a level 1 daily power. Anyways, so you get 2 at-will powers, and that page is right down here. You get 1 encounter power and 1 daily power. At-will powers can be used once around. There is no limit to the at-will powers you can use in an encounter. An encounter power can only be used once per encounter. And the daily power, determining on what it is here, can only, same with utilities, can only be used once. If it's an encounter daily or an encounter utility, can only be used once. If it is a at-will, it can be used multiple times. But I'm pretty sure all dailies, excluding a few, can only be used once because they are considered encounter. It will tell you whether or not it can be used more than once, if it can. So, we're in Inspiring Warlords. So let's look at our options here. So, the Warlord's Inspiring Word class feature works like the power in the presented below. Just one second. Guardian attack. So, this is a class feature. Now, a lot of people get confused on whether, well, it's an encounter, so that means I have to take that and I don't get another counter. No. It is a class feature. Every Warlord gets this no matter what. They don't have to decide whether they want or not. It is there. So by default, you do have 2 encounter powers. You have your feature and whatever one you pick at level 1. So right here under encounters, we can put Inspiring Word, which is a special healing. You can use this power twice per encounter, but only once per round. And it's a minor action with a close burst 5, so it has to be within 5 squares of you. 1 ally or yourself, the target spends a healing search and regains an additional 1d6 hit points. This is how you would heal. And as you level up, it gets stronger. As far as marking it down on the page though, I usually determine what page it is. So in this case, page 146. That's how I mark it, because I have the book beside me where I flip up to page 146 and go, this is what it does. Alternatively, while I'm writing up my character sheet, I have another piece of paper that I just write what it does on. That takes a little bit longer though. Next, let's start with the level 1 attacks. At level 1, you have 4 at-will powers you can choose from. You have Wolf Pack Tactics. Step by step, you and your friends surround the enemy. It is a standard action like most at-wills, most moves in general. The target is on 1 creature, and the special is before you attack, you can let 1 adjacent ally to either you or the target shift 1 square as a free action. So let's say you have enemy right in front of one of your ranged guys. You can use Wolfpack here to get your ranged guy to shift back 1 so the enemy doesn't get an opportunity attack on him, and he is now at range to be able to use his ranged attacks without getting hit. The attack is strength versus AC, where if you hit the strength accuracy, it is 1 weapon plus your strength modifier, which for us is 3. And of course, it increases as you go on. That's a very good at will to have. Next at will is Commander's Strike. This is also a standard action on one creature where the attack is an ally of your choice makes a melee basic attack against the target. If it's a hit, the ally's basic attack damage plus your intelligence modifier. Now, since we're going to inspiring, this wouldn't be the best because they would only get a +1 to their damage. However, it is a very good move if you have a high intelligence. This basically, let's say the enemy is too far away from in your range. So if you can only move 5, let's say it's 7 squares away, but your ally is already in combat with him, you can use this and get an ally to attack and increase his damage. Next on the list is Furious Smash. You slam your shield into the enemy, bash him with your weapon's half, and drive your shoulder into his gut. Your attack doesn't do much, but your anger inspires your allies to match your ferocity. This is a strength versus fortitude move on one creature. If you hit the enemy, you deal damage equal to your strength modifier. So first we'd only deal 3 damage. And then you can choose one ally either adjacent to you or the target, and this ally applies your charisma modifier as a power bonus to the attack roll and the damage roll of his or her next attack, which would be 2. If the ally does not attack the target by the end of his or her next turn, the bonus is lost. Basically, you do a small amount of damage to increase the amount your next ally is going to do. The time you would use this if you have someone who does a lot of damage very fast, like a ranger. You would use this on your ranger, and your ranger all of a sudden hits the guy for, if let's say he crits and it's like 30 damage, now it's 32. And that too can make a difference. Lastly, there is Viper's Strike, a strength versus AC attack on one creature. If you hit, one weapon plus strength mod, and the effect is if the target shifts before the start of your next turn, it provokes an opportunity attack from an ally of your choice, which is pretty good. However, in my opinion, for this Warlord, Furious Smash and Wolfpack are the best at wills to get. So we're going to do Wolfpack Tactics and Furious Smash. Next, we have our 4 encounter powers. So, we have Guarding Attack, which is a strength versus AC on one creature. If you hit, it's 2 weapon damage plus strength mod, and until the end of your next turn, one adjacent ally to either you or the target gains a +2 to AC against the target's attacks. So let's say another good example is you have a ranged friend who is being attacked by a melee guy. You can use this if you hit a different enemy per se and give the AC boost to your ranged guy so that way he's a little bit tankier so he might not get hit. If you're using the Inspiring Presence, like we are, the power bonus to AC equals 1 plus your charisma modifier, equaling a +3 to their AC instead of a +2. We are most likely going to go with that, but let's look at the other 3. Hammer and Anvil is a strength versus reflex versus one creature where it's 1 weapon strength modification damage. One ally adjacent to the target can make a melee basic attack against it as a free action. The ally adds your charisma modifier to the damage, so your ally is going to get a +2 attack as well as you hitting him. This is really good if you and an melee ally are attacking the exact same guy. It can do a lot of damage really fast. Next, Leaf of the Wind is a strength versus AC one creature where it's a 2 weapon strength mod damage, and an adjacent ally can swap places with the target. This would be more so to get your ranged or your melee closer to or farther away from an enemy. finally is Warlord's Favor. Strength versus AC, 1 creature, 2 weapon strength mod damage, and 1 ally within 5 squares of you gains +2 bonus to attack rolls against the target until the end of your next turn. And if you have the tactical presence, the bonus is 1 plus your intelligence modifier. That wouldn't be too beneficial for us because it would still be 2. The winner by far here for this Warlord is Guarding Attack. The last power on our level 1 list is daily powers. And we have 4 daily powers here to choose from. We have Bastion of Defense. It's strength versus AC on 1 creature, where if you hit, you deal 3 weapon damage plus strength mod damage, and allies within 5 squares of you gain +1 bonus to all defenses till the end of the encounter. That includes AC, Fortitude, Reflex, and Will. So it's a permanent 1 for the encounter, which is really good. And also, allies within 5 squares of you gain temporary hit points equal to 5 plus your charisma modifier equaling 7. So not only do allies around you get more hit points, but everyone's defense increases by a 1. Lead the attack as a strength versus AC, 3 weapon on 1 creature with modification damage of strength. Until the end of the encounter, you and an ally within 5 squares of you gains the power bonus to attack rolls against the target equal to 1 plus your intelligence modifier. And if you were to miss the attack, so you failed to hit his AC, until the end of the encounter, you and each ally within 5 squares just gains +1 bonus to attack rolls against the target. You would probably use this on a boss or a tank or a target, because if they die, that's the end of it. Pin the Foe. 3 weapon strength modification damage for strength versus AC on 1 creature. Until the end of the encounter, the target cannot shift if at least 2 of your allies or you and 1 ally are adjacent to it. This can help pin down an enemy. Pin the Foe. Finally, White Raven Onslaught. 1 creature, strength versus A3. C. 3 weapon plus strength mod damage, and you slide an adjacent ally 1 square. Until the end of the counter, whenever you and an ally within 10 squares of you makes a successful attack, the attacker slides an adjacent ally 1 square. If you miss, you choose an ally and shift them 1 square after making a successful attack. Bastion of Defense is the winner here. It is very strong no matter what type of build you're going for. I highly recommend it just because temporary hit points and a bonus to defenses overall is very important. And if you're playing a tank, that's something you want to aim for. However, if you were being a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more striker-ish, lead the attack and pin the foe would be quite good. Even White Raven Onslaught would be good for that matter, but for more of a tank, Bastion of Defense is much better. That's everything you get at level 1 for that. There's one more thing you gotta look into, and that is your equipment. Your weapons, your wealth, and your armor. To find that, we go over to page 4 of this, page 3 in the hard copy, if I remember correctly, and we go over to equipment. Well, we still have this to cover. We'll cover that in a second. Equipments. Coins and currencies. Let's start with that. This explains what the coins and currencies is. As far as how much you start with, it's kind of DM's discretion. What I'll do is I'll say we start with 100 gold pieces, and you buy your weapons and armor, and whatever gold you have left is how much you start with. Next, we're going into armor. Now, keep in mind we have 16 strength. So if we wanted to, we can go and get a proficiency with scale armor and get skill armor at level 1. And what this will do is this will make us proficient in it, And if you're proficient in armor, I'm trying to remember, with heavy armor, basically it would remove the speed. Yeah. Which for dwarfs doesn't really matter. Skill armor in general is probably the way we want to go. However, we can still get plate armor. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our 100 gold here and spend 50 of it for plate armor. Darn spelling. What this does is plate armor gives us a +8 to our AC. So we will note that. Keep in mind we only have 50 gold that we're allowing ourselves to spend now. But if you want to be proficient in it, and I'm pretty sure it'll tell you right here if you're confused. Where is it? The heaviest type of armor made up of shaped plates, blah, 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 blah. No, it doesn't. Maybe it does up here. By no way am I perfect. I'm learning just as much as you are. Yeah, as it says right here, when you wear heavy armor, you don't add your ability modifier to your AC. Chainmail, scare armor, and plate armor are heavy armor. Generally, if you're proficient with something, that's what it would go to. You would add bonuses to it. So, for example, if we go down to armor here, hide armor is a +3 to AC. You would be adding your dexterity modifier on to that also. Only if you're proficient in it, though. With heavy armor, it doesn't matter too much. I could be wrong, and it could have some sort of effect, but to my general knowledge, it doesn't. Next, we are going to be a tank, so we're going to want to use a shield, and we could go for a light shield or a heavy shield. We are proficient. I didn't write down our proficiencies, did I? Let's go and see if we're proficient with just light shields. Yes, we're proficient in light shields. So we'll probably go with the light shield, I say. That is not the right page. What's light shields give us? Light shields gives us a +1 bonus, whereas a heavy shield gives us a +2. Light shields, you need to use your shield hand to wield a light shield properly. You can still use that hand to hold another item, climb, however, you can't use your shield hand to make an attack. Heavy shields give you a higher amount. You don't gain the shield bonus to AC or reflex defenses. That doesn't make sense. Shield types. The proper shield proficiency to use a shield effectively. When you use a shield, you strap it to an arm and sometimes use a hand on that arm. Your shield arm and shield hand. Shield grants a shield bonus. To that, you add to your AC and to your reflex defense. If you're not proficient with a shield, you don't gain the shield bonus to your AC or reflex. There we go. Sorry. Little bit rusty myself, but it's good to figure it out together. We're proficient with light shields, so we're going to want to get a light shield unless we train into a heavy shield, which we should be able to do with a feature. Now, do we want that? The bonus is between a +1 and +2. That could be huge. So maybe we want to come back to the shield. So let's put a hold on the shield and go to weapons. Because if we can get training through a feature in shield, we'll want the heavy shield for sure. Next is weapons. Since we want to use a shield, we're going to want to stick to a one-handed weapon. Now, how do you determine a one-handed weapon? Well, when we get to the page here, it'll tell you right here, one-handed or two-handed weapons. Now, we can use simple or military weapons, and the difference is really damage. We're definitely going to go for a longsword though, which is right here. Long swords are my favorite swords because they're generally the better. However, now that I think about it, if you remember, we're proficient with warhammers for being a dwarf. It just so happens that warhammer is a one-handed weapon. So, the difference here is we're trained in military melee weapons, but warhammer. Okay. Being a warlord, this doesn't really affect us. But let's say we were a cleric who isn't proficient in military melee weapons. Now we can use the warhammer. So the difference between the warhammer and the longsword. Warhammer is a 1d10, longsword is a 1d8. The warhammer is versatile, the longsword is versatile. And I guess the really difference is heavy blade and hammer. Versatile means you can use it in one hand or two. We're going to go for the warhammer just to satisfy the dwarf. Warhammer, which is 1d10, V for versatile, which gets rid of 15 gold pieces, bringing us to 35 gold. So now we want to know if we can get training in heavy shield to complete our collection. So let's go back here under Feats 190, so 191-ish. Now, as you advance in level, you gain access to more feats. At level 1, you gain access to 1 feat, 2 if you're human. And they can all be listed here. And according to what stats you have, determines whether you can get it. Now, believe it or not, your alignment can affect feats you get. For example, if you have the channel divinity, you can invoke the power of your deity to use armor of Bahamut. So channel divinity is the more holy classes, and the way alignment affects it, well, it's more of RP wise. If you're using armor of Bahamut and you're worshipping a different god than Bahamut, it's kind of weird. RP wise, you could probably go armor of, insert that deity's name. However, it's still pretty cool. What we want to look for though is right here. You can see armor proficiency and all of this. The prerequisites are right there. Scale, fire. Let's see if we can find something for shields. Armor proficiency. Can we? Here it is. Shield proficiencies. So to get the shield proficiency of heavy, we need to have at least 15 in strength with the shield proficiency in light, which we have. So our feat up here is going to be shield proficiency heavy. Go back to our armor. And now for 10 gold, we can get a heavy shield, leaving our character with a nice 25 gold and a heavy shield, which is +2 to AC or reflex defense. We're going to go with AC though. For that, either or, you'd be tanky, but this is more harder to hit, not faster to dodge, if that makes sense. So now we get a +10 to our AC from our armor. So let's go up here. So armor and ability mods, we get a +10, giving us at level 120 AC. That is insane at level 1. Now we can actually finish the defense page here. You might see a bill here. Each two are connected together, and you take the highest ability and add it to that defense. So our highest ability here is 3. So this raises this fortitude to a total of 14. Our highest ability here is 1, raising our reflex to 11. And here it is 2, raising our will to 13. We don't have any dexterity, and we don't have a half level or anything boosting our initiative, so we don't get any bonuses to initiative. Normally, our armor would give us a -1 to armor. However, since we are a dwarf, encumbered speed keeps us at 5. For page sakes, we're going to be at 4, but remember your encumbered speed, you're at 5. Also, with our shield and armor, we get a -2 check from each, giving us a -4 check. What that means is that anything listing armor penalty, we get a -4. And if we do a check with that, -4 is going to be deducted. So like stealth, we have a -4 to stealth. Our endurance is now at a solid 0. Whoops. Our athletics is at a 4, and our acrobatics is at a -4 because we are walking metal at this point. Next, we can deal with our actual weapon. We have the shield. We'll do senses first. You add your skill bonus to your insight and perception here. Our insight is 2, our perception is 2. Both of these get 2, making both of them 12. This would be sensing and seeing enemies and how you would determine that. Next, in the attack workspace and damage workspace, this is where you can kind of preset moves and weapons to equal all the things, so you don't have to keep remembering I add this and this and this and this. Usually I do it with just the melee attacks. However, I would highly suggest you have a damage workspace and attack workspace page separately, and you write all of your moves and calculate them according to the rolls. So we're going to just do the Warhammer here. So the attack bonus is your accuracy, and that is half of your level, which is 0. And if you're proficient with it, you get to add your proficiency modifier, which for us is strength. And any class and proficiency is +2. Yes, you're proficient in it, you get your proficiency modifier. You also add your ability modifier. Kind of mix those up there. And as you can see, Warhammer is a +2 proficiency, giving us a +5 to our rolls when we attack with our Warhammer. And with damage, it's the same thing. Our ability modifier is strength, so we add a +3 because we don't have any features or enchantments or anything to our attacks. And that is the general outline of how to build a Warlord. The Warlord we went here is an inspiring tank who, when his allies are having second deals, encourages them with words of bravery and courage to make them want to go on. He is a walking tank. He can take every single hit with his massive 20 AC and deliver killing blows with his Warhammer. This is not a foe you want to mess with, and he is looking great. I'll scroll down the page so you can kind of see the stats and everything we went with here for the first level. And this is going to conclude our Warlord video. These videos are a little bit long, and I'm sorry. I try and do them as fast as possible, but I'm even still learning how to do these little by little. So if you've seen something I did wrong and you want to correct me, awesome. Leave any feedback in the description down below, guys, as long as with what you want to see next. If you want to see something in the character creation more explained in depth, let me know and I'll do that. Until next time, guys, have a nice day, alright?